I think it would be hard to undervalue the springs. They're unique in the world. There's no place like them anywhere. But it's certainly true that they have been the venue for some fairly significant changes that we've witnessed really over the recent past. One of the mysteries about springs is why it is that some springs have exhibited really significant declines in their ecological health, and that is to say loss of habitat because of the submerged aquatic vegetation being smothered by algae or lost altogether, and others haven't. And I think that creates some confusion for regulators, it creates some confusion for the public, and it creates an interesting and important puzzle for scientists to collect information and think seriously about it. The study that we did was essentially thinking more about these ecological interactions, that the changes in the densities of the herbivores can change the amount of algal biomass that gets consumed and thereby lead to this proliferation problem. The Southeast has seen the populations of snails essentially plummet. And so that there's strong reason to believe that for some reason, whether it's a change in habitat or a change in water chemistry or a change in something else, is actually inhibiting the proliferation of gastropods, of snails. And so linking all that together, it seemed like a reasonable hypothesis that the snails might be important factors. And what we found was that they're enormously important, perhaps the dominant factor in explaining why there is algae or not in a particular location. For many of the snails, algae is one of their potential food sources. And so they're actually grazing the algae. And anybody who's recreated in springs and seen the little Alemia snails that carpet many of the springs, you can watch them for just a couple minutes and really get a feel for the effect that they have. They're essentially mowing the landscape. And when they are not there to perform that role, that algal biomass accumulates and accumulates, and we have this essentially quite catastrophic change in the condition of the ecosystem. That study was observational. In other words, we went to the environment and measured natural variation. The next step was to experimentally manipulate the density of snails and watch the algal response. And that story is even more compelling in the sense that the exclusion of snails leads to massive changes in the algal accumulation, the biomass of accumulated algae, and that in fact high densities of snails are able to preclude that. The most obvious and most important take-home from this study is that if we want to understand changes in ecological systems, we have to recognize that we don't only affect ecological systems by affecting the way that plants grow. And to be able to demonstrate that that is an enormously important pathway of change, I think was an important contribution to the discourse about how to make sure that these springs are sustained for the future. And if you will, they're sort of records of our stewardship of the land. And so I think of them as, you know, if we get the spring story right, if we get them to function in the way we hope they will, then that's really a testament to both our will and our understanding of how this place works.